I still remember the exact moment, standing in the hallway outside the conference room, gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. Through the glass walls, I could see them all. Senior leadership huddled around the table nodding, in agreement as my direct manager, Eliza, pointed to a presentation showing the quarterly results my team had achieved. My team, my strategies, my late nights and missed dinners. I should have been in that room. 3 weeks earlier, Director of Marketing had opened up after James took an offer at a competitor. I'd been assured by Eliza herself that I was the front runner. "Just between us," she'd said, leaning across my desk. "You've practically got this, in the bag. We just need to go through the formalities." I'd believed her. After 6 years at Meridian Publishing, why wouldn't I? The meeting adjourned and the executives filtered out, nodding curtly as they passed me. Something was off. I caught Robert, our CFO, avoiding eye contact entirely. When the room emptied, I walked in to find Eliza gathering her materials, a deep, slight flush on her cheeks. "Looked like a good meeting," I offered, setting my mug down. "Oh, Alex, yes, very productive." She shuffled papers into her folio without looking up. "Any decisions about the director position?" I kept my voice casual, though my heart was racing. There was a pause, brief but telling. "Actually, yes, they've decided to bring someone in from outside, someone with fresh perspective." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "I thought the team needed continuity. Wasn't that the whole point of our conversation last month?" "Plans change." Eliza finally met my eyes. "The board wants to take the department in a new direction. The new hire starts Monday. Vivian Chen from Archer Media. You'll report to her directly." "I see." I didn't, not really. What I saw was the carefully constructed path I'd been following suddenly ending at a brick wall. "And when were you planning to tell me?" "We're telling you now, Alex. I hope you'll help Vivian transition smoothly. Your institutional knowledge will be invaluable." She checked her watch. "I've got a call. We can discuss this further at your performance review next week." She left me standing alone in the conference room, surrounded by chairs still warm from the people who had just decided my future without me. My campaigns had increased conversion rates by 47% year over year. I'd built relationships with every major distributor in the Northeast. I'd even declined an offer from a rival publisher just 3 months ago because Eliza had hinted at upcoming opportunities for advancement. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop to a flood of emails, most requiring immediate attention. I closed them all and instead pulled up Vivian Chen's LinkedIn profile, Harvard MBA, 5 years at Archer where she'd launched their digital transformation, multiple industry awards. On paper, she was impressive, exactly the kind of person I might have hired myself. But I hadn't been given the chance. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "How'd the meeting go? Did they make it official?" I stared at it for a long moment before typing, "Meeting went fine, nothing official yet." I couldn't bring myself to say more, not yet. Not until I figured out what had just happened and what I was going to do about it. That night I took the long way home, walking 20 blocks in the drizzling Seattle rain. By the time I reached our apartment, my clothes were soaked through, but my mind was clearer. This wasn't just about a promotion, it was about respect, about transparency, about whether I could continue pouring myself into a company that seemed perfectly willing to take everything I offered without giving anything in return. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on our balcony watching the city lights, thinking about Monday morning and the stranger who would be sitting in the office I had mentally decorated as my own, thinking about all the things I wanted to say to Eliza and all the reasons I shouldn't, thinking about what comes next when the path you've been following suddenly disappears. Monday arrived with brutal efficiency. I'd spent the weekend alternating between drafting resignation emails and convincing myself to give Vivian a chance. By the time I walked through Meridian's glass doors, I had settled on calculated neutrality, professional but reserved, helpful without being eager. The marketing department had been transformed overnight. Fresh flowers sat on the reception desk and a welcome banner hung in the common area. Eliza stood in the center of our team, arm around a petite woman in a crisp navy suit. Vivian Chen looked younger in person than in her LinkedIn photo, but carried herself with unmistakable confidence. "Everyone, this is Vivian," Eliza announced, her voice carrying an enthusiasm I hadn't heard in months. "She's going to revolutionize our approach to digital." As the team applauded, I hung back, observing from the edge of the gathering. Vivian's eyes found mine, and she broke away from the group to approach me. "You must be Alex," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you." Her grip was firm, her smile practiced. "All good things, I hope?" "Absolutely. I've been studying your campaigns. The Thornfield series relaunch was brilliant, especially the micro-influencer strategy. I'd love to pick your brain about it later." I nodded, momentarily disarmed by her genuine appreciation of my work. "My calendar's open." Vivian was whisked away for IT setup and HR paperwork, and I retreated to my office. An hour later, an email from Eliza landed in my inbox. "Team restructuring effective immediately. Please see attached org chart." I clicked open the document and felt my stomach drop. My role had been split in two. I would keep the traditional marketing channels, while digital strategy, the growth area I'd been building for 3 years, was now directly under Vivian. The 2 content creators I'd hired and trained would report to her. My team of 6 had become a team of 3 overnight. At 2 p.m., Vivian knocked on my doorframe. "Got time for that chat?" We sat in the small meeting room adjacent to my office. She came prepared with a legal pad full of notes and specific questions about client relationships and campaign performance. "I want you to know I value your experience here," she said after we'd covered her initial questions. "Eliza mentioned you were considered for this role." I kept my face neutral. "Was I? It sounds like it was a close decision, but I'm hoping we can work together rather than me sabotaging you out of spite." The words came out, sharper than intended. Vivian didn't flinch. I was going to say, rather than operating in separate silos. I've seen too many marketing departments fracture that way. She leaned forward. "Look, I get it. This is awkward. If I were in your position, I'd be furious. But I'm here now, and I have targets to hit by Q4, which means I need your institutional knowledge and your team's cooperation." Her directness surprised me. "I appreciate the candor. So we can work together?" "We can work together," I agreed, though something inside me had already begun to calculate other possibilities, other paths. The rest of the week unfolded in a series of meetings where Vivian systematically dismantled and reassembled our entire marketing approach. Some of her ideas were genuinely innovative. Others seemed designed to erase any trace of my influence. The legacy channels, as she now called them, my channels, received the smallest budget allocations in the new plan. By Friday, the office politics had become clear. Eliza treated Vivian like a protege, inviting her to executive lunches and strategy sessions where my presence had previously been optional at best. The younger team members gravitated to Vivian's energy and contemporary approach. Even clients who had been my contacts for years now requested that Vivian join our calls. I stayed late that Friday, long after everyone had left for weekend happy hours I hadn't been invited to. In the quiet of the empty office, I opened my laptop and began to compile a document. Contacts, campaign data, client preferences, competitor insights, all the information that lived in my head after 6 years at Meridian. Information that wasn't in any database or shared drive. Information Vivian would eventually need. As I worked, organizing years of knowledge into neat, digestible sections, I wasn't yet sure what I intended to do with this document. Use it as leverage? Leave it behind if I resigned? But something about externalizing all I knew made me feel less trapped, as if I were reclaiming ownership of my expertise piece by piece. My phone buzzed, a text from my wife. "Still at office? Dinner's getting cold." I looked at the time, nearly 9 p.m. I saved the document to my personal drive and shut down my computer. Whatever decision I made about my future at Meridian, it wouldn't be tonight. And it wouldn't be on an empty stomach in a dark office where my voice increasingly seemed not to matter. 3 weeks into Vivian's tenure, I found myself constantly toggling between reluctant admiration and simmering frustration. She worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen, arriving before dawn and often still hunched over market research when I left in the evening. Her pitches to clients were flawless, her digital strategy innovative. If circumstances had been different, I might have enjoyed learning from her. But circumstances weren't different. My performance review with Eliza had been postponed twice, leaving me in professional limbo. The document I'd begun compiling, my insurance policy as I'd come to think of it, had grown to nearly 30 pages of invaluable insider knowledge. On Wednesday morning, I arrived to find Vivian and Eliza in the conference room with Marcus Thornfield, our biggest client and my closest professional relationship at Meridian. Through the glass, I could see them laughing, reviewing materials I hadn't been consulted on. When I knocked and entered, their conversation halted abruptly. "Alex," Marcus stood to shake my hand, "I was just telling these ladies how much I've enjoyed working with you over the years." Over the years. Past tense. My stomach tightened. "We were just finishing up," Eliza said, gathering her things. "Vivian can fill you in on the new direction for the fall campaign." New direction? I looked from face to face. "I thought we finalized the approach last month." Marcus glanced uncomfortably at Vivian. "Well, we've been discussing some adjustments, more digital integration, influencer partnerships. The core concept is still yours," Vivian interjected, "just with a contemporary twist." After Marcus left, I confronted Vivian directly. "You should have included me in that meeting." "I emailed you the brief yesterday," she replied, organizing her notes. "When you didn't respond, we assumed you were on board." I checked my inbox. There it was, sent at 11:47 p.m. "You sent this after midnight and scheduled a 9 a.m. meeting?" "We work in a fast-paced industry, Alex. Clients like Marcus expect agility." She paused, studying my face. "Look, I get the sense you're still adjusting to the new structure. Why don't we grab coffee tomorrow and clear the air?" I agreed, but that night at home, I pulled out my laptop and finally did what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I updated my resume and activated my dormant LinkedIn profile. Within hours, I had messages from 2 recruiters and a former colleague now at Harper Media, Meridian's main competitor. The coffee meeting with Vivian never happened. Early Thursday morning, an emergency client situation erupted when a scheduled author interview contained controversial remarks that were rapidly spreading on social media. Vivian and Eliza huddled in crisis mode, leaving me to handle the regular workflow. By mid-afternoon, they'd developed a response strategy without once seeking my input, despite my 5-year relationship with the author in question. I was typing a terse email to Eliza when my phone buzzed with a calendar invite. James Foster, my former colleague who'd taken the director role at our competitor, wanted to meet for drinks that evening. "Just to catch up," the message said. We both knew it was more than that. The upscale hotel bar where we met offered the perfect blend of privacy and ambient noise. James looked good, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen when he was at Meridian. "You seem happy," I observed after we'd ordered. "I am." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Harper values experience. They brought me in to build something, not to dismantle what was working." I nodded, understanding the implication. "How'd you know I'd be receptive to meeting?" "Industry gossip. Word is Meridian's new golden child has been systematically pushing you to the margins." He leaned forward. "Plus, you updated your LinkedIn, subtle but noticeable." "I'm exploring options," I admitted. "Nothing decided yet." "What would help you decide?" James asked, setting his glass down deliberately. "Honestly, respect, transparency, a sense that my experience matters. How about all that plus a 40% salary increase, full creative control over campaigns, and a team of 8? He slid a folder across the table. "The official offer, VP of Marketing Strategy. We've been watching your work for years, Alex. We want what you know, how you think." I stared at the folder without opening it. "Why now?" "Because Meridian just did us a massive favor by sidelining their best asset. James signaled for another round. Take the weekend to think about it. We can adjust the terms if necessary. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of something beyond frustration. Validation, maybe. Or vindication. Someone recognized my value, even if it wasn't the company I'd given 6 years to. I left the bar with the offer folder tucked into my jacket, walking the long way to the train station. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, but I barely noticed. My mind raced with possibilities, calculations, scenarios playing out in various sequences. At home, my wife found me at the kitchen table, the offer papers spread out before me, my insurance policy document open on my laptop. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked, reading over my shoulder. "Harper wants me, VP level. More money, more autonomy." She sat beside me, taking it all in. And this other document? I hesitated. Everything I know about Meridian's clients, strategies, weaknesses, things I could take with me or use as leverage, she finished, her expression concerned. "That's not you, Alex. You don't play those games." Maybe it's time I did. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. I've spent years being the principal team player. Where has it gotten me? She took my hand, her touch grounding me as my emotions threatened to pull me under. "What do you actually want? Not what do you want to prove to Eliza or Vivian or Meridian. What do you want for your career, your life?" Her question hung in the air between us, cutting through the noise of my wounded pride and accumulated resentments. What did I want? The answer wasn't as simple as accepting Harper's offer, or confronting Meridian's leadership, or leveraging my knowledge for concessions. It was about something more fundamental, reclaiming a sense of purpose and dignity that had nothing to do with titles or reporting structures. I closed my laptop, covering the papers with my hands. I need to think. I spent the entire weekend wrestling with my options, the Harper offer burning a hole in my desk drawer. By Sunday evening, as the city lights flickered on outside our apartment window, I'd circled the same mental loop dozens of times without resolution. "You're overthinking this," my wife said, setting a cup of tea beside me. "You already know what you want to do." "Do I?" I stared into the steaming mug. "Because I've played out every scenario and none of them feel right." She sat across from me, tucking her feet beneath her. "Talk me through them again." Option 1. I take Harper's offer. Better title, more money, fresh start. But I'd be directly competing against clients I've built relationships with for years. It feels disloyal. To clients who are already being transitioned to Vivian? I winced at the accuracy of her observation. Option 2. I use Harper's offer as leverage at Meridian. Force them to clarify my role, maybe even create a parallel position to Vivian's. And work under people who didn't value you enough to promote you in the first place. I nodded reluctantly. Option 3. I take all my knowledge, all my client relationships, and go independent. Consulting. Maybe eventually my own boutique. Agency. For the first time that weekend, her expression shifted from concern to interest. "You've never mentioned that before." "It's always been a someday plan. 5, 10 years down the road." "Maybe someday is now." She reached for her laptop. "Let me show you something." She pulled up a document I'd never seen before, a business plan with projections, potential client lists, even a name, Watershed Strategy. "When did you do this?" I asked, scrolling through detailed financial models. "I've been adding to it for about a year. Every time you complained about Meridian taking credit for your work or not having the freedom to pursue your vision." She shrugged. "It was just an exercise at first, but it's actually viable, Alex. Especially if you start with a few anchor clients." The possibility settled over me like a key turning in a lock. Not Harper. Not a compromised version of my current role at Meridian. Something entirely mine. "I'd need seed capital," I murmured, already calculating. "And I'd have to be careful about non-compete clauses." Harper's offer could help with both, she pointed out. Their signing bonus alone would cover startup costs, and you could negotiate a delayed start date. Use the time to get legal advice on client transitions. The plan took shape as we talked into the night, transforming from desperate reaction to deliberate action. By morning, I knew what I had to do, and it started with giving both Meridian and Harper definitive answers. Monday arrived with unusual clarity. I requested meetings with both Eliza and Vivian, scheduled for later that afternoon. Then I called James at Harper. "I've decided not to accept the offer," I told him directly. A beat of silence. "That's unexpected. Can I ask why? Is it the compensation package? Because we have flexibility." "It's not about money. I'm taking a different direction entirely," Meridian counteroffered. His voice sharpened with competitive interest. "No, I'm launching my own consultancy." Another pause, longer this time. "Bold move, risky in this market. I've done my homework," and spent all night refining it, but he didn't need to know that part. "Well, the door remains open if you change your mind. First year of entrepreneurship can be brutal." His tone shifted, becoming more collegial. "Any chance you'd consider a strategic partnership? Harper could use specialized consulting in certain market segments." The opportunity registered immediately, a potential first client without the constraints of full employment. "I'd be open to discussing that, once I'm established." "Good. Keep in touch then." The call ended with unexpected possibilities where I'd expected a burnt bridge. The momentum carried me through the morning, through routine tasks that no longer felt like constraints but merely temporary obligations. My meeting with Eliza was scheduled first at 2 p.m. I arrived with my resignation letter and a clear sense of what I would and wouldn't say. She greeted me with distracted efficiency, eyes on her tablet. "Alex, I'm glad we're finally having this review. Your performance has been—" "I'm resigning," I interrupted, sliding the envelope across her desk. Her head snapped up, tablet forgotten. "What?" 2 weeks' notice, effective today." "Is this about Vivian? Because if you're having difficulty adjusting to the new structure—" "It's not about Vivian," I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about recognizing when it's time for a new challenge." "Where are you going?" Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Harper?" "No. I'm starting my own consultancy." The revelation clearly caught her off guard. Her expression cycled through surprise, calculation, and finally something like respect. "That's a significant undertaking." "I'm aware." She tapped her fingers against the desk, considering. "We should discuss transition planning for your accounts. And there's the matter of your non-compete clause. My contract limits competition for packaged offerings, not custom consulting services." I'd spent hours reviewing the fine print over the weekend. "But I'm not looking to poach Meridian's clients. I'm developing my own niche." Another lie, but a necessary one. While I wouldn't actively recruit clients immediately, I knew several who would follow me once their contracts with Meridian expired. "I suppose we'll need to cancel your meeting with Vivian," Eliza said, reaching for her phone. "Actually, I'd prefer to tell her myself." Our conversation with Vivian was briefer than I'd anticipated. She received my news with professional grace that bordered on relief. "I had a sense you might make this move," she admitted after Eliza left us to talk. "Your expertise has always extended beyond Meridian's current offerings." "You knew I was considering leaving?" She smiled slightly. "Let's just say I recognize the signs. I made a similar exit from my previous position." The realization that she might have understood my frustration better than I'd given her credit for was unexpectedly humbling. As we discussed handover protocols, for my remaining projects I found myself wondering if, under different circumstances, we might have made an effective team. By the time I cleaned out my desk that evening, a strange lightness had replaced the resentment that had been my constant companion for weeks. The decision, once made, had unlocked something I hadn't fully acknowledged. Not just ambition, but a hunger for autonomy that no promotion could have satisfied. I placed my keycard on the desk, powered down my computer one final time, and walked out of Meridian's glass doors without looking back. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, registering a business name, setting up banking, drafting service offerings. But tonight belonged to the pure, uncomplicated relief of choosing my own path forward. My 2-week notice period at Meridian unfolded with surreal efficiency. While colleagues expressed surprise and asked perfunctory questions about my plans, management seemed intent on expediting my departure. My access to certain systems was quietly restricted. Meetings where I'd once been essential suddenly didn't require my input. Client calls were rescheduled for dates after my final day. I focused on documenting processes, transferring knowledge, and when no one was watching, building the foundation of Watershed strategy. I secured a business license, opened accounts, and began drafting service proposals for potential clients. At night, our dining table disappeared beneath spreadsheets and marketing plans while my wife and I refined our approach. "What about office space?" she asked on Wednesday evening, midway through my final week. "Home office for now," I replied, calculating startup costs for the 20th time. Maybe a co-working subscription for client meetings. "And your first clients?" I hesitated. "I have prospects, but no commitments. The non-compete means I can't approach anyone directly for at least 90 days. The uncertainty of that fact hung between us, unspoken but substantial. We had savings. The Harper signing bonus I'd walked away from would have covered 6 months of expenses easily. "We'll manage," she said, reading my thoughts. "This is the right move, Alex." 2 days before my departure, Marcus Thornfield, the client whose meeting I'd been excluded from weeks earlier, requested lunch. Eliza approved it with visible reluctance. We met at a quiet restaurant near Marcus's office, away from Meridian's usual haunts. He ordered appetizers before addressing the reason for our meeting. "I hear you're leaving to start your own shop," he said, studying me over his water glass. "News travels fast. In this industry, like wildfire." He leaned forward. "I'd like to know more about your new venture." I outlined Watershed's planned services: strategic consulting, campaign development, market analysis, carefully avoiding any suggestion that I was soliciting his business. Marcus listened intently, asking occasional questions about methodologies and deliverables. When our entrees arrived, he set his fork down deliberatively. "I want to be your first client." I nearly choked on my water. "Marcus, you know I can't." "I know about the non-compete, but Thornfield Publishing isn't just Meridian's client. We work with 3 agencies, and our contract with Meridian specifically covers traditional publishing channels." He smiled. "We've been wanting to expand our direct-to-consumer digital strategy for months. That would fall outside your restrictions." The opportunity was tantalizing but dangerous. Eliza would see it as poaching. "It's not poaching if it's for services Meridian doesn't provide to us." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. "See this correspondence from February? Meridian declined to quote us on a DTC platform because it wasn't within their core competencies." I remembered the request. I'd wanted to pursue it, but James's departure and the subsequent restructuring had shelved the proposal. Now Vivian was redirecting Meridian toward exactly these services, but hadn't yet formalized offerings for existing clients. "It's still a gray area," I said, though my mind was already calculating what this account could mean for Watershed's launch. "Business lives in gray areas, Alex." Marcus put his phone away. "I'll tell you what. I won't sign anything until your 90 days are up, but I want a right of first refusal on your availability, and I want us starting preliminary discussions immediately. Why take the risk? Vivian is building exactly these capabilities at Meridian. Vivian is talented but untested with our audience. You understand our market in ways she doesn't yet." He shrugged. "Besides, we've worked together for 5 years. I trust you." Trust. The word landed heavily after weeks of feeling undervalued and overlooked. I realized with sudden clarity that while I'd been focused on titles and reporting structures, I'd built something more valuable: relationships and reputation that transcended organizational charts. "I'll need to consult my lawyer about the specific language in my non-compete," I said carefully. "But preliminarily, yes. I'd be honored to work with Thornfield as Watershed's first client." Marcus grinned, lifting his glass in a quiet toast. to new beginnings. My final day at Meridian arrived with anticlimactic formality. I completed exit interviews, surrendered remaining credentials, and exchanged perfunctory goodbyes with teammates. Vivian was traveling for a conference. Our last conversation, a brief but surprisingly warm phone call, where she wished me luck and asked if I'd be open to comparing notes someday. Eliza, meanwhile, remained coolly professional, her handshake at our final meeting carrying the unmistakable weight of someone tallying potential threats. As I walked to the elevator for the last time, laptop bag slung over my shoulder and 6 years of professional history condensed into a small cardboard box, Robert from finance hurried to catch up with me. "Leaving without saying goodbye?" asked, slightly breathless. "I didn't think you'd notice," I admitted. Our interactions had been minimal since he'd avoided eye contact during that pivotal meeting weeks ago. "I've noticed more than you think." He glanced over his shoulder before continuing in a lower voice. "Listen, this restructuring isn't just about your department. The board is pushing for aggressive digital transformation across all divisions. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're the only one who's managed to get out on your own terms." His expression turned serious. "And because the finance team is next on the chopping block, my role included." Understanding dawned slowly. "Are you asking for a job, Robert?" "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He pressed a thumb drive into my palm. "But I do have 20 years of financial modeling experience and a very thorough understanding of how agencies ought to structure their billing systems for maximum profitability." I stared at the small device, recognizing the calculated risk he was taking. "This is proprietary information. It's templates, industry standard approaches, nothing specific to Meridian's clients." His eyes met mine directly. "Think of it as a parting gift from someone who admires your courage." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Robert stepped back, nodding once before turning away. "Good luck with Watershed, Alex." The name of my new company, which I hadn't mentioned to anyone at Meridian, hung in the air as the doors closed between us. The message was clear. I wasn't the only one who had been preparing for change, and perhaps I wasn't the only one who might eventually find their way to my door. Outside, spring sunshine bathed the street in warm light. I hailed a cab instead of taking my usual train, the small luxury a conscious departure from routine. As the city slid past the window, I realized I was neither sad nor angry about leaving Meridian behind, only impatient to begin building something that was entirely mine. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "Freedom Day, champagne tonight?" I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. And maybe a strategy session." I think we just landed our first 2 clients. 18 months can transform everything. Where once I had a cubicle with a dying ficus plant, I now had an office overlooking Pike Street with floor-to-ceiling windows and a conference room that actually fit all 7 of my employees. Watershed Strategy had outgrown our second workspace in under a year, necessitating this move to proper commercial real estate, a milestone I'd once imagined would take 5 years to reach. Success had arrived with unexpected velocity. Marcus Thornfield had been true to his word, becoming our anchor client and bringing 2 subsidiary publishers with him. Robert from finance had indeed joined us 6 months after my departure from Meridian, bringing not only his financial expertise, but connections throughout Seattle's publishing industry. What had begun as a desperate pivot had evolved into a thriving boutique agency specializing in digital transformation for traditional publishing houses, a niche Meridian had recognized too late. "The Baxter proposal is ready for final review," my assistant announced, placing a folder on my desk. "And your 3 o'clock is here early." I glanced at my calendar. The meeting was simply labeled Potential Partnership at the request of the other party. "Give me 5 minutes, then send them in." I used the time to scan Baxter's proposal one last time, making a single notation before setting it aside. When my office door opened, I looked up to find Vivian Chen standing in the threshold, as impeccably dressed as ever but somehow softer around the edges. "Vivian," I rose, genuinely surprised. "I didn't realize you were my 3 o'clock." I asked them not to specify. She shook my hand, glancing around the office with appreciative eyes. Impressive space. I've been hearing good things about Watershed. Thank you. Please sit. I gestured to the chairs opposite my desk. Can I offer you something to drink? Just water, thanks. I poured 2 glasses from the carafe on my credenza, using the moment to collect my thoughts. We hadn't spoken since a brief, awkward encounter at an industry event 6 months ago, where Vivian had mentioned changes at Meridian without elaboration. So, I began, settling back into my chair. What brings the Director of Digital Strategy from Meridian to Watershed? Former director, actually. She took a sip of water. I resigned last month. The news jolted me. I hadn't heard. It's been kept quiet while they determine next steps. She set her glass down deliberately. The truth is, Meridian has been struggling since you left. They've lost 8 major clients in the publishing sector alone. I'm aware of 4, I admitted. The others must have gone elsewhere. They did. To Archer Media, primarily. My old firm. A wry smile touched her lips. Ironic, isn't it? Meridian hired me because of my Archer experience, but couldn't retain the clients I was brought in to transform. Why did you leave? I asked, genuinely curious. The same reason you did, ultimately. Lack of support for my vision. She leaned forward, clasping her hands on her knee. Eliza and the board kept moving the goalposts. First it was modernize our approach. Then it became, but don't change too much too fast. The mixed messages made it impossible to gain traction. I nodded, remembering similar frustrations. What will you do next? That's why I'm here. She reached into her bag, extracting a slim portfolio. I've spent the last month researching potential next steps. One option was returning to Archer. Another was following your path and going independent. And the third? Joining forces with you. She slid the portfolio across my desk. I'm proposing a partnership. Watershed has cornered the market on traditional publishing digital transformation, but there's an adjacent space that's untapped. Academic and educational publishing. I have connections throughout that sector from my time at Archer. I opened the portfolio to find a meticulously researched business plan for a new division of Watershed, complete with market analysis, potential clients, and projected revenues. You've done your homework, I acknowledged, flipping through the pages. I learned from watching you. You always came prepared. The compliment caught me off guard. I was under the impression you viewed me as an obstacle at Meridian. Initially, perhaps. She shrugged. But I quickly realized you were simply protecting work you cared deeply about. I respected that, even when it made my job harder. I studied her across the desk, remembering the resentment that had consumed me during those final weeks at Meridian. The emotion felt distant now, replaced by professional curiosity and a grudging appreciation for how skillfully she'd survived in the environment that had nearly broken me. Why not go independent? I asked. You clearly have the vision and connections. Because competition seems less interesting than collaboration. She gestured toward the windows, the office, the evidence of Watershed's success. You've built something remarkable here in 18 months, Alex. I'd rather contribute to that momentum than start from scratch on my own. Her candor disarmed me. Had our positions been reversed, had she established a successful agency and I approached seeking partnership, would I have been as forthright about my reasoning, or would pride have compelled me to frame it as a generous offer rather than a strategic alliance? I'd need to discuss this with my leadership team, I said finally. And there would be questions about client conflicts, revenue sharing, integration of our approaches. Of course. She sat back, relaxed but attentive. I'm not expecting an answer today, only consideration. And if we decline, then I'll wish you continued success and launch my own consultancy. She smiled with genuine warmth. Either way, I've learned it's better to control your own destiny than to let others dictate your worth. The echo of my own journey in her words struck a chord. We sat in contemplative silence for a moment, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the office floor. "You know," I said finally, "when I left Meridian, I was convinced you were the villain in my professional story." She laughed, the sound surprisingly unguarded. "And I thought you were deliberately undermining me at every turn." We were both wrong, and both right, in ways. She stood, gathering her bag. "The truth is, Meridian created a scenario where we couldn't both succeed within their structure, but that doesn't mean we can't succeed together outside of it." I walked her to the door, our conversation shifting to industry gossip and mutual connections. As we said our goodbyes, she paused in the doorway. "One more thing you should know," she said. "Eliza's been replaced. The board finally recognized the exodus of talent and clients was a leadership problem, not a personnel issue." "Who took her place?" "No one yet. They're conducting an external search." Her eyes met mine with unmistakable meaning. "I thought you might want to know, in case you're interested in coming full circle." The suggestion lingered between us, a path not taken, a door unexpectedly reopened. For a fleeting moment, I imagined walking back through Meridian's glass doors, not as the overlooked team member, but as the returning conqueror, installed in the corner office that had once been Eliza's. "I appreciate the information," I said, carefully. "But I think my circle has expanded beyond Meridian's walls." She nodded, understanding the deeper truth beneath my diplomatic response. "I thought you might say that. It's why I respect you enough to propose this partnership." After she left, I stood at my window watching Seattle's afternoon bustle below. 18 months ago, I'd walked these same streets consumed by uncertainty and wounded pride, unable to see beyond the immediate crisis of my professional identity. Now I commanded a view from above, with the perspective that only distance and success can provide. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "How did the mystery meeting go?" I smiled, typing back, "Interesting proposition. Former rival wants to become a partner." Her response came quickly. "Plot twist, what are you thinking?" I considered the question, watching Vivian emerge from our building and hail a cab on the corner below. What was I thinking? That sometimes the path forward appears only after you've burned the map you were following. That success isn't just about proving others wrong, but about proving yourself right. That the colleagues who once seemed like obstacles might someday reveal themselves as allies. "I'm thinking," I typed back, "that the best revenge isn't just living well. It's creating something no one else could have built without you."